Hey guys, Tuckat here, and I want to make a quick video re-reviewing Pantheon, because Pantheon was one of these systems that I was incredibly negative towards, and I've been kind of interested looking back at Path of Exile recently, and just generally where my opinions have changed, because I'm someone who's very vocal about my opinions, and I'll be the first one I've been wrong about the game, and where I think the game should go in certain ways, or whatever in the past, sometimes not. So let's just talk about Pantheon. So my initial review of Pantheon was it was an interesting system which lacked depth, generally wasn't too interesting, was punishing when it came to Atlas changes, and didn't really leave that much design space for builds. So, coming back at Pantheon after, 2 leagues now basically messing around with it, what do I feel about it? I feel like it still has some issues. I do think that Pantheon itself is in a much better state. Although that being said, I do think it does still suffer slightly from the set and forget problem. So for me personally, a lot of people I play with, most people for minor, they kind of just lock in Soul of Gruthkul. For the increased physical mitigation, it's very handy. Having the reduced attack speed, sense of the tissues are very good. I know a lot of people are very fond of Soul of Raslava, which is the life regenning one. It's decent for early characters going to lab, but for general mapping it really isn't needed, and I think is kind of overrated. I think that Soul of Ralakesh is actually better for lab in most cases, something that a lot of people should probably use before you go into a lab room. It gives you 25% reduced physical damage over time taken while moving. This works on quite a few of the traps in lab, so that's very, very handy. A lot of people got to see use out of Soul of Ugel with old Reflect. With new Reflect, this minor god feels pretty meaningless and should probably be updated or changed, or maybe affect volatiles, bearers, or the new Reflect. If there was like a minor Pantheon which helped to mitigate like on death effects, so reduced on death effect damage taken or something, you could probably come up with a better name. I think that maybe be a bit more interesting when it comes to Soul of Ugel, and even thematically kind of makes sense because it was like a boss which jumped out of pools, died, made a bunch more boss, whatever, on death effects to be cool, maybe. Soul of Gurakan sometimes seems some usage for the movement speed. I think the movement speed is the best bit of it. I think the chance to evade if you've taken a savage hit recently could be buffed. It could just be 5% chance to evade attacks. If you haven't been hit recently, I think that'd be more powerful, generally more interesting. Comboed with the movement speed, there'd be a nice synergy, right? So it's kind of like, if you haven't been hit recently, you move faster, and if you haven't been hit recently, you're more likely to evade stuff. So it means you're more likely to evade. The initial hit means you're more likely to keep the movement speed buff. Soul of Abrath, it sees use on some Righteous Fire characters because it reduces the Righteous Fire damage they take. So it's good for getting RF characters off the ground early while leveling. It's also okay for a little movement speed boost while running Burning Ground maps, but really nothing that great. And then Soul of Shikari is probably my new favorite and is one that I use a lot. So 5% reduced chaos damage taken is just kind of nice. A lot of builds are life these days. A lot of builds don't have access to too much chaos res. For hardcore especially, it's really nice. Reduced chaos damage taken while in Caustic Cloud, pretty solid. The fact that it gives you 5% reduced chaos damage taken, then an additional 25% reduced chaos damage taken while in Caustic Cloud, that is like 30% reduced chaos damage taken from Caustic Clouds, is pretty big. And then the immune to poison is like super underrated. I think the immune to poison is really powerful. I played some hybrid builds in Turmoil. I think hybrids are also super underrated. The fact that you can get very easy access to like poison and like burning ground immunity through Pantheon is pretty good. That's one other quite nice thing about Soul of Abrath. And I think in that sense, Pantheon is a huge success. The way that for some niche builds, it's more than just, oh, you take this because it reduces the fire you take on RF. Like, for this, Soul of Abrath for Righteous Fire, I think is kind of boring and kind of dull, because it's just, oh, you just take less damage. But for a hybrid build, something to be able to go like, oh, I now don't need to worry about Burning Ground, something which used to be very scary for my build, that I think is a massive success. A hybrid build not having to worry about poison damage, that I think is a massive success. And this is the kind of thing that I'd love to see more of in the Pantheon system and in future game systems. You have stuff which isn't like super obvious power creep, but it's like its specific utility, which is just huge quality of life for the way that a build feels to play. One of the biggest things which felt bad about playing hybrid builds was this whole like, oh well, how do you really handle chaos damage? Well, with Soul of Shikari fully upgraded and Soul of Arakali fully upgraded, that's it right there. Like, you suddenly have all of this inbuilt reduced chaos damage, reduced mitigation against damage over time, caustic clouds, etc. The Dunes boss, the caustic cloud it makes when you don't one-shot it, was actually one of the scariest things about my Thermal character. The reason why I reset my Thermal character to CI, which later got me killed because I had way more defense being hybrid, but you get my point, right? In that sense, I think Pantheon is actually succeeding very well. And speaking of Soul of Arakali, Soul of Arakali is the other like main point where I feel like Pantheon really does perform well, where you have this ramped up recovery rate, the way it affects Slayer Leech, the way it affects just regen in general. I've seen plenty of Slayer builds utilize this. I've also seen a few pretty cool regen-based Scions and Tricksters make use of this, where you just kind of have like super regen builds. That is cool. That is something which, like, it changes the way you build. Although, as a slight caveat to that, I do think it's kind of silly how Slayer is already in such a powerful state currently in the game that to then have a node which has such amazing synergy with Slayer, and there aren't really any other builds which have such levels of your build is just so much better with Pantheon. That feels a bit bad, right? If this was, like, if the 50% increased recovery rate level of power was something you had across all the Pantheons, that would be power creep, but at least be, like, consistent power creep. I think one of the issues I still have with Pantheon, how for a lot of builds it feels meaningless, but just really powerful for some very particular builds. I'd love to see more, like, general utility across the board, or stuff brought down, or stuff brought up. I think if Pantheon was really powerful for everything, that would be power creep, but at least it's like power creep that everyone can enjoy rather than just specific power creep, if that makes sense. Soul of Solaris is really nice for some boss farmers. If you farm Minnow all day, if you farm Lab all day, having that just if there's only one enemy nearby. Also, you know, in retrospect, Soul of Lunaris having the increased Physmit movement speed for nearby enemies is another like go-to. General mappers, I'll do like Soul of Lunaris, Soul of Grithgold, just that easy physical mitigation. I do like how a lot of access to physical mitigation is now available to what I used to mostly only play being like evasion, dodge-based bow builds. Having access to all of the sudden Physmet is pretty nice. I just wish they're a little bit more interesting, you know, more impactful to your gameplay, like Soul of Arakali, for example, rather than just you get a bit of Physmet, you get to avoid some projectiles. The avoid projectiles that have chained, that is really nice. And a really nice thing for summoners. Very, very huge quality of life for summoners. And then going to Soul of the Brine King, I think Soul of the Brine King, it was nerfed in its previous state. They changed the durations of the stun immunity and freeze immunity and stuff. I feel like it could probably be buffed. I feel like it could go back to in the past 4 seconds, which is what it was in beta, I believe, if I remember correctly. Although I do still think there is a big, big issue with Pantheon when it comes to the way the Atlas works. So the way that you get a lot of the like powerful, like fully upgraded sections is by killing stuff on the Atlas. Now you can do things where you roll the map twinned, and if you roll the map twinned, you can put Divine Vessel into your map, kill one of the twinned bosses, which will fill up your Divine Vessel, but doesn't like completely brick your Atlas. But you still need to be running maps which will mess with your blocking situation, and will mess with your Atlas unlock. So there is a kind of workaround, but I think that this is one of those things that just kind of like, it falls back into the whole sextant problem. It's a really cool idea which can very easily be expanded upon. You keep building up the game, you keep adding new map bosses. Lo and behold, you can then add in more Pantheon things, you can add more upgrades, you can revisit these, and these are something I really hope do get upgraded when we get the Ascendancy reworks. But I think that Pantheon still could do with a little bit more seasoning. Although I will admit that in my initial review, I was pretty harsh. So, in retrospect, Pantheon, was I wrong, was I right? I think a little bit of both. I think I probably could have given a slightly more optimistic review, but I do think that a lot of my core issues with Pantheon are still in place, and hopefully going forward in 3.2, Pantheon will see a little bit of tweaking coming along with the Ascendancy reworks, and hopefully they can actually design some of the new Ascendancies with some of the Pantheon stuff in mind. It's a really good time to do both of them at the same time, since we've had multiple times confirmed Ascendancy reworks coming up soon. Maybe you could make more Ascendancies which interact directly with Pantheon, kind of like how Slayer directly interacts with Soul of Arakaali. Maybe if you haven't killed mobs recently, Ignite deals damage. That could be one, possibly. Anyway, I'm Taki. Have a good day. Bye-bye.